Have you ever encountered references like, oh, it's such a typical, slightly powdery yellow floral with a little touch of honey, maybe even zesty powderiness of mimosa? If you want to understand the mystery and quite a controversial nature of what we call yellow florals, that's the right video for it. My introduction to yellow florals was fairly vague and nebulous, and it turns out that is just the category itself. Looking at different fragrance classifications, historically there is no common agreement between what yellow floral actually represents and the type of ingredients or even flowers that fall into this category is way more complex than the color yellow would suggest. If you're curious about the type of fragrance genres and classifications that exist, that are commonly accepted, you can watch this episode and I'll put a link somewhere here. However, if we zero in on the floral category and specifically what is a yellow floral, it's a very interesting synthetic perceptive genre. Historically, we thought that any flower that is yellow fall into that category. However, a lot of flowers that are white in color, white florals, also contribute quite a lot of facets into this category in the genre florals. Also anisetic florals, which are green and zesty and almost bitter, such as mimosa, which is yellow in color, but technically speaking is its olfactory profile, the way that it smells, is very far removed from the smell of tagetes or marigold or ylang-ylang. Ylang-ylang is another perfect example. Technically speaking is yellow, but it smells gourmand, sweet, fruity. So according to its odor profile, it should be either in the fruity florals or gourmand genre as a floral ingredient that creates this sweet, edible type of presence. Daffodils / narcissus can be yellow, but also yellow-white, and its odor profile is anisetic, green, bitter, and very much herbaceous. It's more toward aromatic herbs than it is toward what we think of jasmine. To that end, tagetes or marigold might be nearly the only floral ingredient that can contribute to actual making of a perfume as an aromatic ingredient as the only truly and only yellow floral. The way that I grew up, marigolds were mostly the accessory, unfortunately, of a lot of old grandma houses and cemeteries. So I never really consider it to be something that you would want to smell as. However, Molinar de Molinar by Molinar changed my perception of tagetes. If you want to find the closest reference you can to the marigolds as tagetes / these some slightly zesty, slightly powdery with this feel of juicy floral nature, Molinar de Molinar I think is the iconic reference. I bought it blindly, and to be honest, mostly because of the gorgeous bottle that it came in and historic value of Molinar as a fragrance house. Molinar de Molinar has unmistakably retro sound, which is now all the rage, especially in certain intellectual young circles. These retro, non-sweet, complex, almost vintage smelling profiles, they really add a lot of charge and a lot of depth to otherwise a very casual environment we live in these days. Fashion-wise, style-wise, it's almost becoming a bit challenging to express yourself in a sophisticated way without being judged or misunderstood. To give you an example, I was walking by high school just on my way, and I saw kids pouring out of it. It was thousands of kids, and 99.99% of them were wearing some unidentifiable hoodies and baggy pants or t-shirts. No style, no color, no choice, no real identity or self-expression there. It was the most oppressively normative and sad youth crowd that I've seen when I was growing up. Oh my God. They were norming, but there were styles. There was grunge, there was preppy, there was hippie, there was this, there was that. There were so many games we could play. And now what I see in younger crowd, it is quite an oppressive fashion environment these days. It's the reverse side of multicultural, multi-trend, anything goes, everything exists type of world that we live in, that you end up with essentially blasé nothing at the end. So it is a growing trend to express yourself through things that cannot necessarily be seen or labeled. And fragrance is a perfect vehicle for that type of sophistication, that type of weirdness, otherness, uniqueness, authenticity that is also can, if you wish, have intellectual charge, rebelliousness. It can have so many layered meanings. So for that, this going to the cemetery with a small bouquet of tagetes that are already growing there, to visit your grandma's grave somewhere in the middle of nowhere, this nostalgia for times that afforded space and energy to quiet reflection. That's a really cool fragrance for that. So if you are into sophistication, trying to escape the trap of basic and norming, Molinard de Molinard also, it combines beautifully with other florals and the way that I wear it mostly, because otherwise to me it's very powdery, somewhat flat yellow floral, almost a shipper, but it doesn't have enough of a contrast to be such. I like to zhuzh it up, to add more vibrancy, sun, and energy to it by adding another discontinued gem, which is also yellow floral, but of a different kind. This is Fendi Furiosa. One thing that I gotta say makes me a little bit sad is that the industry lost a little bit of its appetite for flamboyant yellow florals that existed in the past. We still can find gorgeous, multifaceted, vibrant white florals. That means think of tuberose, jasmine, sweetness of white roses, freesia, and all the other things combined together, potentially even more gourmand with addition of tonic, caramelly flavors, honey-like things, or condensed milk and whipped cream, which is a whole genre of just tuberoses usually. It's very tuberose heavy. If it's creamy and caramelly, usually it has a lot of tuberose just to keep your life there in the overdose of sweetness. But when it comes to flamboyant yellow florals, it's a very 80s, maybe even 70s thing. However, there was a period when yellow florals were making a comeback, and this is 2010s, which is a perfect time for this next round of retro, because it's exactly 20 years ago. So it's perfect time to revive this trend of yellow florals. So the Molinard de Molinard was made or remade and reissued then, and even sweeter, more flamboyant, and more like diva-esque type of yellow floral is Fendi Furiosa. If you wanna give it a go and try and know what are the iconic yellow florals are, I'll leave a link below so you have a chance still, but I have very limited supply to share. So here we're discovering yet another facet of what can be called the yellow floral, confidently. So still it has to be floral, all right? We have to detect this non-edible, romantic, pleasant, something floral vibe. But for it to be sunny, because yellow floral is the imaginative part of the genre, is that it has to feel, regardless of what it's made of, it has to feel sunny. It's sunlit, it's warm, like you're enjoying a sunny afternoon, maybe in the middle of July, August, September, this really warm, sunlit, yellow, orange feeling of sunlight. And Furiosa definitely has it. Usually the way that you create that feeling is by adding amber accord. So it's more of this resinous vanilla situation, but vanilla has to be non-edible. If you start thinking about vanillin as something edible, you immediately switch into a gourmand genre. So non-edible, sunny, floral, juicy, sunlit vanilla is Fendi Furiosa. And these two, with the zestiness and slightly shipper-esque, serious, more layered and deep, somewhat zesty floral, when you add more sweetened, amberish, bright, vivacious, happy floral, they're just an unbeatable combo. It's really beautiful. What else can make a really decent amber floral? If you continue along the ride of looking for glamour, the golden years of Jennifer Lopez. So it's like shiny, glitter, shine, gold everywhere. Everything sparkles, everything is luscious, everything is almost over the top glamour. And then you immediately think, how about Lancôme Poème? Here's my second bottle that I broke, but used up nevertheless. Alert everyone, it is officially discontinued. So if you want to have that diva, glowing, bright, vivacious, think Raja Dove or Kilian, some of Amouage compositions, this is it. Way before all of these brands came along with their bestsellers. There's so much vivaciousness, staying power, projection, sillage in Poème Lancôme that it gets tiring after a while. So it is very tragic that it's discontinued. Nevertheless, this is one of those designer and fairly affordable depending where you buy it, fragrances that you need to know, at least to have it in your reference library of odors of fragrances that you've smelled and you remembered and you know well, because it is truly iconic of the category. As I showed you, already used up my second bottle, and it's a very charismatic, very memorable profile. I need a break. I might still get a backup, just so I'm not without it. Fragrances like Poème Lancôme have a really good shelf life. Yellow florals in general is a good category that can withstand the test of time in my experience, and they are collectible. I am curious if we will see the resurgence of this trend again and get some really good new examples, reimagined yellow florals. But good news for those who like to have collections and backups, yellow florals don't get spoiled very quickly, in contrast to mineral and marine accords, oceanic accords. Those fragrances rarely survive the test of time just due to the nature of chemical ingredients that compose them. So I'm gonna take a break with Poème. Might still get a bottle just so I have it in the dark corners of my library, but a honey but not gourmand, sunny, well-lit floral that I would call a yellow floral that I'm going to use now instead is Jill Sander number 4. I finally got myself a full-size bottle. I got myself a teeny tiny 30 ml because I'm tired of using up decants and not being able to make my mind if I want it or not. Very much a similar genre and category as Lancôme Poème, but just in case if Lancôme Poème is a bit too much of a diva for you, try Jill Sander number 4. It has a little bit of an edge. That's a tuberose accord. White floral, technically speaking, but all the sunny honey sweetness here makes this juxtaposition of ingredients a sunny, vivacious yellow floral and very soft amber-ish base. It has character. It has a little bit of edge thanks to tuberose, but it's not too much. It's not tuberose-y fragrance. It's not the monotuberose that just drills onto your brain. And it's also not a typical amber gourmand. It stays very comfortably and warmly right in the middle. High recommendation. Try either Lancôme Poème or Jill Sander No. 4 so you understand what is the diva, old school, beautiful, larger than life yellow floral smells like. Now we're entering a very treacherous territory of yes but not quite. Mimosa. When we're talking about mimosa-centric fragrance, we have to be very careful. We need whatever facet of mimosa is being displayed to us or marketed, it still needs to feel warm, soft. It cannot be too bitter, it cannot be too powdery, it cannot be too sweet. And one of the interesting additions to my collection, which is super new, I'm still studying this fragrance, is L'Oreille du Bois by Jacques Fath. This actually is the fragrance that inspired this whole video. When I smelled it, it really gave me a pause because I thought I was getting a mimosa scent. That's how I interpreted it. But it's a much more complex and nuanced yellow floral. It has the most conceptually delicious velvety friction in it, but it's not green and it's not zesty. It has more honey. It has more metal edge that to me is different from green cashmere reetiness. Mimosa here really is blended well. I think it's ylang-ylang. It's with the side of fruitiness, the sweetness that it presents. And it's a very grown-up scent. Even though it's a fairly new addition to the world of niche fragrances, I qualify L'Oreille du Bois as a new, relatively new age fragrance that delivers on many, the most precious aspects of vintage perfumery. L'Oreille du Bois, in my book, is where it's at. And it's fairly affordable. Now, an important facet and ingredient that you often will find makes yellow floral bloom and justifies fragrance to be called into that genre is ylang-ylang. I'm fortunate enough to have secured a first fraction, which is a more expensive version of extracted ylang-ylang essential oil. So just to refresh the reference of it, how you would perceive that, ylang-ylang has at least 3 very specific blocks of perception of how you can perceive that it's ylang-ylang. It's sweetness that reminds you of some unidentifiable fruitiness. It has, oddly enough, the fresher, greener aspects, almost woody in a way. And together, there is a ghost of banana in there. A lot of fragrances that will claim to be banana-esque, and it's one of the trends of 2025, will work in ylang-ylang into the pyramid this or that way, because that's what, from floral ingredients, brings us the closest to the smell of bananas. But the fragrances that contain ylang-ylang cannot be floral if we don't elevate them beyond the fruitiness and the sweetness of it. And to make matters even more complex, frangipani, plumeria, is often called into the yellow floral category while it smells like a fruit salad. And a perfect example of how the two combine their powers together to create a yellow floral that is questionably yellow would be La Dompteuse en Cragi by Serge Lutens. If we only play off the fruity and sweet facets of these two florals, we will pretty much get a straightforward gourmand. Add some boiled musk or vanilla to it and we're done, right? We just got yet another Elisab fragrance essentially. It still walks that very fine line of being fruity, yellow sweet. It's almost gives me this fruity shake with added sweeteners to it. Quite a departure, even from Poème Lancôme or Jill Sander number 4. This is where it gets really iffy, you know what I mean? Arguably, you could call this a gourmand with some floral aspects. To me, it still is more floral than it is gourmand, but I would not argue if somebody claimed that to their nose, this is actually a fruity gourmand. So, ylang-ylang and frangipani, and I have quite a collection here, walking way more the line of fruity sweet fragrances than they are yellow florals, but in small doses to round up, soften the landing of maybe more harsh ingredients such as mimosa or tulip. This can really work. To give you more of a contrast, things that I would not really consider yellow floral and consider fruity floral is Ormond J Frangipani. And just as a refresher, if you accidentally sprayed perfume on a fruit salad and ate it together, it's just not, it doesn't have enough of layers that yellow floral assumes it will have. You have to perceive something as yellow floral rather than declare, oh, it's a yellow flower, therefore it must be. You know what I mean? In here, another example is Rag & Bone Manoi, which is also a reference to Plumeria / Frangipani. It's almost to me a fruity white floral. It doesn't have that condensed, juicy facets. It's neither slightly powdery or metallic or zesty to be supported by sweetness of fruity florals. It's a fruity hair shampoo. And that's the danger going so literal on a soliflor, on a monofloral fragrance that tries to represent the beauty of frangipani. Is it a somewhat believable frangipani? Rag & Bone Manoi versus Ormond Jane Frangipani? Yeah, Ormond Jane is more fruit salad. Manoi by Rag & Bone is more an elegant, young, flirtatious floral than this frangipani. Neither of them really delivers a multi-layered, multi-dimensional experience for it to be a perfume, you know, something that adds value to me in a non-visible way. So in that sense, I find that La Dompteuse in Cagis by Serge Lutens does a better job because it has a lot of facets of ylang-ylang, a lot of facets of frangipani, and more. Another dangerous territory is narcissus or daffodils. I'll show you one example of narcissus perfume daffodils that has nothing to do with yellow florals and another one that definitely is a yellow floral. Mont de Narcisse Eau de Parfum by L'Artisan Parfumeur is a thin leather as a background with added floral accord like a narcissus, but also with, I presume it's ylang-ylang because to me it smells like dried bananas in the opening, this fruity dried banana accord. Then in the middle I get daffodils, but then I just get this slightly patchouli, sour, somewhat melancholic leather accord. Thin, elegant. It's truly a dynamic and interesting niche perfume. I think it's an underrated study. It's so interesting to wear it because it has these 3 distinct phases to my nose when it changes so much. It actually lasts. The leathery accord, the thin, elegant, slightly sad, detached leather here lasts a long time. The opening, the dried bananas, is very quick transition, and then you just get this quieting of banana fruitiness into daffodils and then into leather. Very interesting, super duper cool, cerebral, and quite wearable niche at every stage. Yet, what does it have to do with pure narcissus? What does it have to do with yellow florals? In my view, nothing. I would rather put this into leather category, unusual leather type of fragrance, than yellow floral. Even though it has narcissus accord, it has something that reminds me of ylang-ylang, which is also yellow flower. And yet it doesn't really deliver on what yellow floral genre is. It's a very different beast. Here is an example of a daffodil-centric fragrance that is unmistakably a beautiful, a benchmarking paragon of daffodil-centric yellow floral fragrance. And this is Astara by Penhaligon's, coveted and discontinued gem that you can still try from my collection, but I have very limited supply of samples to share. This is what's different about Astara. It has the layers that yellow floral, a good one, a beautiful one, must present. Oddly fresh and almost zesty, a little bit green, somewhere there on the periphery. It still gives you this honeyed pollen, beeswax type of soft, silky blending in the midst of very complex and unmistakably floral category. If you're looking for a photorealistic, beautiful, complex fragrance, real perfume that does the justice to the art of perfumery, to the beautiful and rarefied genre of yellow floral, and to the daffodil as a flower, Astara. If you can find it, if you love yellow florals, if you love the idea of having the most realistic daffodil, Astara is where it's at. And it's that and more. Somebody might say, well, if it's all about this sunny honey presence, take any perfumes that contain beeswax or honey accord or pollen specifically, and here you go, yellow floral. Not so easy. Here are two examples that are dedicated to pollen and honey. One of them is a yellow floral, and another one, not quite. Here is Linden by L'Artisan Parfumeur. This baby presents a bit of a puzzle, but technically speaking satisfies the multi-layered meaning and dynamism nested requirements for something to be considered yellow floral. It is dedicated to linden. It's somewhat like a honeysuckle smell. It's just a little bit less animalic, it's less vivacious. And linden has green, lighter aspects. Imagine honeysuckle, especially if you live nearby where the bushes are, it gets almost overpoweringly overwhelming. It's somewhat animalic. It has a little bit of that insistence. Linden smells a little bit like honey if you add honey to that and remove the insistence, remove the animalic nature in jasmine and honeysuckle, many other white florals. That's linden. It's little flowers. They're usually collected in teas made with them in various parts of Europe. However, when we're talking about Linden by L'Artisan Parfumeur, specifically an example of a pollen-inspired yellow floral, instead of green zestiness or grittiness or bitter, sour, green components, it has even but still fairly polished and sharp metallic notes. And this is what to me makes it somewhat of a questionable yellow floral. I still expect this to be a little bit more nature inspired, a little bit more botanical. I don't consider metal notes to belong in floral categories, but if you replace stems, branches, acidic greenness that yellow florals have to have with metallic notes, that's what you get. It stays very light, very ethereal. And yet, when we're talking about pollen, honey, and the most realistic depiction of those, we cannot skip discussion of the zoologist bee. I do have a decant. I find myself unable to wear it. I represent a group of people who appreciate the art and the technicality that went into composing this unbelievable honey-centric fragrance. It has such depth, such sillage, such projection, richness, and lavishness. It's unbearable. It drives me nuts. It's smothering, it's cloying, it's sweet, over the top sweet. But it's probably the most gorgeous, unbelievably impressive honey fragrance. It's the most imaginative and yet realistic honey accord I've ever smelled. All right? Honeybee still holds the crown. Nobody beat them yet. But is that a yellow floral? If we look by the pyramid of perception, and which is pretty much you can see on Fragrantica, for example, these perceptive keywords, I agree with that description. It is a gourmand. Yes, floral components are technically speaking listed in there, but we live in the era of perception. I don't care if ylang-ylang is there or mimosa absolute or this or this or that. We can talk about how they each add a little bit of a layer, a little bit of a facet to create this masterpiece till we're blue in the face. However, it doesn't have the floral block that would be substantial enough to break into the floral dimension to my nose. Everything here serves the purpose of create the ultimate paragon of any association you could possibly have with beeswax, pollen, honey, hence the name bee. It's the most gorgeous, beautiful, deep gourmand, but it's not a yellow floral. Feel free to disagree. Some of the yellow florals, as you will notice them by your nose, will not give you any justification to call it such. But I find this is such an underrated category. This is the world worth stepping into, partially because it's becoming so coveted. Nearly half of the fragrances I show you are either rare, niche, or discontinued. It's very hard to find a good, vivacious, imaginative yellow floral that's new. Now I'm waiting for your recommendations and story time about yellow florals. Have you ever heard of this genre? Are you new to it, or are you a seasoned connoisseur when it comes to this particular nuanced, very dangerous category that keeps people arguing with each other? Is it not? It's truly a nebulous and nested type of niche trend, which I feel is about to resurrect itself. Definitely, I am waiting with a bated breath for yellow florals to make a new step in the fragrance world and enter the arena, and I wonder how they will be reimagined by perfumers for the contemporary noses of generation beta, gamma, you name it, for the youngsters who had not had exposure to now banned ingredients or pretty much gone formulations that are not possible in the limitations of sustainability and safety standards that we live in now. Very curious to hear your stories, your experiences with that, and maybe your recommendations. I hope that was useful. I hope that gave you a few ideas of things to try, or maybe things to pull out from the further darker corners of your olfactory library shelves. Let me know what you think. I'll be waiting for your comments down below. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Give this episode a like, and I'll see you in the next one.